when you set standards, the goal is to win. And however you classify winning in horse racing, that was pretty easy, right? Either win or you're second.
Yeah.
Winning is important. If you're not trying to win, you just shouldn't do whatever you're doing.
Welcome to Mental Stillness. My name is Derek, and I'm excited that somehow you stumbled across this podcast. One of my goals when starting this podcast was to bring mental health conversations into leadership circles. Well, welcome back to the Mental Stillness podcast, and really looking forward to my conversation today with Guinness McFadden, and you're going to get to hear from him and a bit of his journey. We're going to talk about a lot of different topics, and we'll kind of go, as always, where it needs to go. So thanks for tuning back in. And Guinness, why don't you share with the audience a little bit about your backstory, kind of where you're from, because I don't think you're from the great state of Kentucky.
I'm not.
But we claim you.
I'm almost a local. Haven't been here for 22 years. So I think by the time I have great grandkids, I'll be considered a local.
Yeah, we'll accept you by that point.
I grew up in Northern California. I'm 46 years old, so I was born in 1980. Grew up, like everybody did in that time. My dad, I grew up on my dad's farm. He grows grapes and raised cattle and did some other things, but, primarily grew grapes. So grew up last house at the end of the valley, didn't really have neighbors, spent a ton of time outside. And yeah, that was my childhood, running around with a 22 shooting stuff. And
that lines up with your office. I saw some animals that.
Yeah, I do enjoy the outdoors. I like to hunt and fish and do all of that stuff. So yeah. I did not graduate college. I tried. Went to 3 different schools actually. But they say that college isn't for everybody, and I guess I was one of those people. So I'm from Northern California. I moved to the Reno, Tahoe area from 2018 to 2004. That's where I met my now wife, Lisa. She was going to University of Nevada, Reno, and I was friends with a bunch of her friends from high school. And, we met at a house party, and, here we are, married 16 years and 2 kids. So met my wife in Reno. I had worked at North Star Ski Resort for four seasons. I had a different job every year. I was a lifty. I was a lift mechanic. That might be one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, being a lift mechanic. Then
Is that when people get stuck?
No, it's all the routine maintenance that goes into keeping ski lifts operational.
To prevent them from getting stuck.
Exactly. So, all the stuff that people don't see behind the scenes, doing line work in the summers, changing out grips on chairs daily during the wintertime, all of that stuff. Changing oil in giant gearboxes, welding stuff. It was an awesome job, and I loved being on the mountain. Then I was a park dude, working in the terrain park. At my last job, I was the assistant manager of parking and grounds. So parking, 2,000 cars a day or whatever it was, and summertime changing out a bunch of trash cans and running bears off from our dumpster and,
All the things.
all the good stuff.
We were out in Big Sky a couple years ago, and one of the takeaways, it was a week before ski season, but my kids loved watching every day more and more of the cars kind of being put on the ski lifts, and so that was you.
Yeah.
Not funny, in Big Sky, but
like on all those gondolas, people don't know it, but those cars come off every single night and they go back on every single day. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I love that job. And then I finished
California to Reno.
California, Reno. I lived in Donner Lake. My sister was living in Truckee at the time. She was a patroller at North Star. So I lived with her for a minute, and then I had a house in Donner. I had a house in Kings Beach. I spent winter on a couch. So I was all over the place. Moved to Reno in 2001, and I commuted up to Tahoe, and then I got a few other odd jobs. I worked for an excavating company. We, did foundations and stuff like that. I worked for a landscaper for a minute, and then the housing crash came. Reno was hit pretty hard by that. The company that I was working for, we went 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and did that for a little while, and eventually there was just no business. So the company folded, and my aunt and uncle were involved in racing.
Horse racing.
Horse racing. My mom's sister and her husband, and I had been back to Kentucky with them a few years prior and had an opportunity to work at a thoroughbred farm. And at the time I was like, I like what I'm doing. I was working for that excavating company at the time, making a bunch of money doing manual labor when you're 22 years old is awesome. And when the market dried up, I was like, I can always move home. I don't know anybody there. But why not? If I hate it, I can come back. And I got, I was fortunate enough to get a position at Three Chimneys, owned by the Clay family. And they stood horses people have heard of, probably most notably Seattle Slew and Smarty Jones and a ton of other great horses. But I started in November of 2004. I got there the same time Smarty Jones did. And I started as a groom, shoveling shit. And I would do a breeding season on the broodmare division, and then I would rotate to the yearling division for yearling prep. And I did that for 2 seasons. And then I got bumped up to be an assistant broodmare manager at a different division, and did that for a season, all the while still, working sales and doing that. And there was an opening in the sales department. So most of these large thoroughbred farms will have commercial sales divisions where we sell horses at public auction, Fasig-Tipton, Keeneland primarily. So I took that. I was the assistant to the director for 3 years and learned a ton. It was awesome, traveling a lot, on the road a lot, looking at horses, evaluating horses, talking to clients, maintaining existing relationships, trying to develop new relationships. And my boss at the time got married and moved back home, and I got put in the position of director. How old would I have been? I think I was 27, which was kind of wild. A lot of responsibility for a 27-year-old. We were selling $20 to $25 million worth of horses every year, and that was kind of my thing.
So from entry level where you're shoveling to that, what was the timeline?
3.5 years.
Okay. Is that pretty normal in that industry, as far as kind of get your foot in the door? And obviously, if you,
I'm not sure. I mean, I wouldn't consider my path normal. I would like to think that I have some attributes that others might not. I can talk to a wall. So I think it just had a lot to do with my willingness to learn and listen and ability to talk to anybody.
And probably work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, when you come from shoveling gravel to shoveling straw, it was like piece of cake. Like I was used to really hard work, and I always joke that we make up for low pay with long hours. My first boss said, "Do you want Tuesday or Wednesday as your day off?" I was like, "Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday works for me." He's like, "No, it's pick one." Yeah. So, 6 days a week on my days off, I would do breeding shed runs to go see other places, and I loved the aspect of being involved with future athletes, and I loved watching them grow up and all the relationships that I was able to develop over the years, all the interesting people that I met from all different walks of life. It was really good, and super fortunate that I was presented the opportunity to do it. And I always took the responsibility of representing the farm and the family that owned it super seriously. Like, I wanted to not make them look bad.
Yeah. Wanted to honor them and do well. And so you went into that role. How did you get here?
So I did that for 5 years, and the farm was in a transition period. It ended up changing hands and being sold, and the new majority owner eliminated my entire division. I did not agree with
Sounds like a corporate takeover.
I did not agree with that move.
Yeah.
Now or then. I thought that was not the best thing to do financially. I understood why they did it, and I wasn't mad about it. I had already had something else going. So I just rolled with the punches. Doesn't make much sense to get upset over something you have no control over. I had at the time, this was 2014, and 2012, I had started Blackwood Stables. In my recruiting and dealing with all the clients, we were just always sending horses to Florida. And clients were always wanting recommendations on where to send horses, and there's tons of great horsemen in Florida, but I was like, there needs to be
Is that to train the horses?
Yeah.
Okay.
So pre-training, breaking, all of that stuff before they go to a racetrack with their eventual trainer. I said, well, when you fly out of Lexington, you see racetracks everywhere. Like in the 50s, every farm had their own track, and they started their own horses. And I said, why can't we do that here? Leased it was actually a former satellite farm of Three Chimneys. They were no longer using it, and the current tenant was on his way out, and Case called me. Case Clay, my boss, said, hey, you had mentioned if Tracewood was ever available for lease, you'd be interested, and it's available. I remember I was in Tahoe for Christmas with my family, and I was like, no clients, no employees, great, let's do it. So we had, committed verbally over the phone, and got back after a little vacation, and didn't have a racetrack. The neighboring farm had a racetrack. I kind of thought that I might be able to work something out with them. Cold called the owner, who's been a friend for 15 years now. I said, hey, here's what we're thinking. We'll pay to get your track back in order, and we'll upkeep it. I knew he was trying to sell it, and I said, this will only benefit you if this is a functional racetrack. And worked out. We were on that track for 2 years before we could build a track of our own on the farm. And just in time, someone else bought the farm, and that relationship wasn't the same. So it worked out really nicely. So we bought the farm that we were leasing from its owner. And yeah, that was
so whenever you got the farm, the family officially moved here, or did y'all still split your time? Like,
no, we've lived in the same house since Lisa moved to Kentucky. We've been in the same spot since 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, we never lived on the farm.
Gotcha.
I would have liked to have lived on the farm, but from a social standpoint, it's just far more convenient to be in town. So
I've been out there. Not a lot of neighbors that are close.
Not a lot of neighbors. It was really nice, though. I loved being out there. Lisa and the kids loved being out there. We had a great run, but eventually sold it after running it for 11 years.
Yeah.
To do the bourbon thing.
Yeah.
But it was an awesome farm. Put all my effort into it for that time period. We had a lot of good horses come through the gates. We had a ton of great clients, great the best employees. It was a really good time.
So this, the listeners to this are in various industries, and one of the things that caused me to want to even start this was that leadership's everywhere, and it's like we've all been on the receiving end of poor leadership and also healthy leadership. And so when you think about going from entry-level role to your own leadership progression, like my guess is you didn't go from shoveling to then flying around and doing what you were doing and making these key decisions for, I think you said 25 million in sales a year. You had to possess some leadership qualities. So talk about your own leadership journey a little bit. How did you have to show up different, grow, evolve? Like, what were some of your gaps? And you like, hey, maybe I've got to lean in and I've got to do some growth or development. Like, how did you progress?
So I think it probably started with me in sports in high school. Being a quote unquote leader of some of those teams and trying to set the tone and an example for everybody, not just the young people, but for kids that were my age. I think it started then. And then when I was at North Star, I was 22 years old when I was the assistant manager, and I had 30 kids working underneath me, trying to park, ungodly amounts of cars every day in complete chaos, and people screaming at you and honking horns, and I want to park there. And dealing with that, I think I got a taste of what I thought bad leadership looked like. And throughout the journey, I've for the most part, I've had great leadership. Great
Good for
leadership
you.
above me. I've had, not having thought about this a tremendous amount before we got here, but I can think of two bosses that I had that lacked in many important areas. And I would never ask one of my people to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And same thing, setting the tone, showing up early, leaving late, just trying to work hard. And, sometimes when you're in an office setting, it's a little bit more difficult to quantify. But, we did it at Blackwood Stables. We did a lot of the stuff on our own, whether it was running a new line from the well up to our water tank to water the track. Like, we did that. I knew how to do that. And I think the guys could see that I was willing to get in there and work and run an excavator and a bobcat and a dump truck and all those things. So
I don't know if people, we're going to a lot of people here who don't know anything about horse racing and talk about the scale. I mean, think about like a horse track. What are the dimensions here, just so people can wrap their head around it?
Our racetrack was 3/4 of a mile in an oval, and it was 40 feet wide. And then we had a mile turf track around the outside of that, and then a wood chip gallop on the outside of the turf track. So we had 3 different surfaces we could train on. I think that made us pretty unique. Our turf course was particularly awesome because it was more of a European style gallop, undulating, super wide. I think it was 150 feet wide at its most narrow. I took a lot of pride in our surface there. We put from going out and flagging for gopher holes and then dealing with them and, spraying for weeds and
the upkeep had to be golf course maintenance.
Yeah, it looked like the rough on a really nice golf course. Like, that's what we were going for, was to have it be pristine. And then I was hoping it would be one of the nicest turf surfaces in the state, if not the country. And it started out not great, but we got it. And we're so dependent on rainfall. Mm-hmm. We were always lucky when I was there that we had rainfall because we didn't have irrigation. But yeah, it worked and it was great. We would breeze horses over it. We got some used telephone poles that we used for mile markers that we painted to look like,
there you go,
poles on a racetrack, so you could, from
a distance, no one would know, right?
No, they look just the same. You wouldn't know. So so a 3/4 track with a mile turf course and a wood chip gallop also. Mm-hmm. So,
and this is going to show my ignorance is that the same dimensions as you would see at Churchill Downs?
No,
Keeneland?
so normally you're going to see a dirt track on the outside and a turf course on the inside. So the turf course is generally going to be shorter, But in Europe, that's what you see.
Okay.
I mean, there are racetracks that have straight stretches that are a mile long, no turns,
Wow.
and everything in between. Whether you're talking racetracks in France, England, Ireland, they're all very unique.
So from a strategy standpoint, you kind of had European clientele more. Feel like that would be a bigger draw, or
I didn't think that what we were doing in America was the best thing possible. I had been to Ireland and seen some of those yards and talked to my European friends, and I thought the way they were doing it was better. That's it.
And you got to make the decision, and so you got to create which.
And we had a lot of really forward-thinking clients that could see the benefit of it. We were on 285 acres.
Yeah.
So we could turn horses out that were still in full training. Kind of a benefit. We did a lot of rehab work. We started a lot of young horses. We had some horses come 5 or 6 times throughout their entire career. So yeah.
So you talked about earlier, like people shipping horses down to Florida, and so you became a destination here, Central Kentucky, to where people were sending them to you to prep for the Derby or any races, and like you said, rehab.
Yeah, all trainers want horses at varying levels of readiness, but anything from, galloping a quarter mile to breezing 5/8, we could do everything in between, just depending on what the trainer wanted. Some trainers want horses ready to run. They'll do the fine tuning and the tightening of the screws at the end, and other guys or gals want a horse and they want to develop them themselves. And we're good with either. Whatever they wanted, we were happy to accommodate.
So at the same time, you're kind of being a destination, a spot where you all could bring in and train and equip. You all also had your own horses, right? Your own race horses eventually, and
I did. When I was working at Three Chimneys, they had a spectacular policy. Employees were allowed to keep horses at a very reduced rate, like severely reduced rate. So that kind of encouraged people to participate. And, I started buying horses with my uncle and then friends, and we would scour the sales for cheap horses that we thought we could move up. And being on the sales grounds during the sales, it wasn't too big of a stretch to do that. And then when I got Blackwood, I could start and train and race off of the farm. Eventually we were racing off the farm, and that was awesome. I'm not sure.
And what that terminology, racing off the farm, means everything happens at Blackwood, and then you go to the racetrack.
We ship in the day of the races, and we come back that night.
Gotcha.
So if we were going to Kentucky Downs, which is a 3.5 hour drive, we're leaving at 4 or 5 in the morning, getting down, settling in, and racing, and coming right back. So they would be out in their paddock grazing, 6 hours after they raced.
Where people who didn't have their own farm would have to figure out another stop along the way, or
no, they go back to the racetrack and they go live in a box.
Okay.
Where they don't get turned out. The best thing they're going to get is some hand grazing. Now there are other facilities, primarily in Florida, and now there's a bunch of facilities in Kentucky that do what we did. But at the time, Calumet had come under new ownership. We were kind of the only game in town for a short period of time, which was great. And Windstar became what they are now, and a few others. But we were one of the kind of first to get back going. Calumet was definitely before us. But yeah, at the time we were the only game in town. It was great. It was challenging trying to convince people to stay here for the winter, because if you've ever spent a winter in Kentucky, you know that it's cold. But
it can get brutal.
I think on average we probably miss 2 weeks of training days a year, which is not, we overtrain horses as it is. So I didn't think that was going to be a big deal to miss 3 days in January. Now, if you're on the Derby Trail, you miss 3 days in January. Still not a big deal, but not ideal, right? You miss 2 weeks, that's bad. I think most we ever missed in a row was 4 or 5 days, and that's for ice storm. But we became pretty accustomed to treating our track and keeping it from freezing. So, And we had other alternative training things to do also if the track was frozen. Frozen. Wet's fine. Frozen's no good.
So talk a bit about, before we transition into kind of today, you had something pretty awesome happen, when it comes to the horse industry and the horse racing. So kind of share just about that journey, what that is, and I'll let you tell the story. But
sure. In 2019, a horse that I co-owned won the Kentucky Derby, which was pretty awesome.
Which I'm biased, but the Super Bowl of horse racing?
In America, for sure. I think you'd have some internationals maybe argue that, Melbourne Cup's a pretty big deal. The Arc is a pretty big deal. Bunch of big races in England and Ireland. But from an American standpoint, the Derby is what everyone's trying to win. Belmont and Preakness are awesome. If you're from New York, Belmont might be a bigger deal, but as far as national recognition and field size and difficulty to win, the Derby is it. For all the 3-year-old races, you only get to run in them once. But the first Saturday in May, if your horse is not on its game, you never get to do that a second time.
And the name of the horse?
Country House. The kind of path to all it was, so the whole reason why I got involved in horses was my Uncle Jerry. Here's where
Take your
time. He married my mom's sister, and it was on his suggestion that I moved to Kentucky. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. We'll give it a shot. Like I said earlier, I had been here a few years prior to actually doing it. But I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. So I got involved at Three Chimneys and started helping Jerry with his horse stuff. He had, mares and primarily raced, was a breed to race guy. And what was that, 2004? Fast forward to 2014, 15, 16, I got more involved in his operation, helping him out. Not like a paid position. It was 100% like a passion project of mine. Got to hang out with my uncle, talk to him all the time, twice a day. In 2018, he passes away. The funny part about this whole situation was Country House was actually slated to sell. And one of my super good friends who I did a bunch of horse stuff with, Alex Solis, we really like this horse. And we're like, Jerry, it's going to make what, sounds like crazy numbers to people outside of the horse world, but we're like, this thing is going to make good money. We're probably 125 to 175,000. It's going to make good money, but you bred it. It's a 4th generation homebred. You bred the dam's dam, the dam's dam, the great grand dam. You're going to have to spend a significantly more amount of money to replace this horse. So we convinced him. He was a little reluctant at first because he would keep fillies and sell colts. He was very big into his breeding operation, so he would keep all the fillies and primarily sell the majority of the colts. So we had convinced him to keep the colt. And I think we scratched him the day he was supposed to ship in on the sale grounds. And he was gorgeous. That's him right there as a yearling.
We'll show a picture on the video.
Yeah, really, really good looking horse by a son of Smart Strike that won the Preakness. He was bred to go the classic distance, 1.25 miles plus. So he ends up keeping the horse. He goes to Blackwood. We break him. He goes down to Florida, does a little bit more pre-training, and then we send him to Bill Mott, who's a New York, Florida-based trainer that Jerry had used for a number of years. First time out, he runs last. Bill is not known for putting a ton of pressure on first-time starters, and a lot of times he'll run them on the grass, even if he thinks they're a dirt horse, just to let them stretch out. So he runs last. And I remember calling, because we thought kind of highly of the horse. We had always liked him at the farm. The feedback that I got from Florida was always very positive. When he ran last, I was like, oh man, this isn't good.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, great job keeping that one. And he dies 3 days later. 3 days. Something like that.
Jerry dies.
Yeah, Jerry passes away within a couple days of Country House's first start, which was not unexpected, but it was terrible. He left the operation to run up to me and my aunt, my mom's sister. And my aunt loved going to the races, loved all the horses, but was never involved in the nuts and bolts of what was going on. So I think that was new to her. And, I had always made lots of decisions with other people's money, which is really easy to do, but never, all of a sudden now I own all these horses, and then I'm trying to help her navigate all of this the best that we can. And all the while, I keep getting phone calls from Bill Mott, the Country House's trainer, saying, hey, what's going on with the ownership? We need to submit this to the New York Racing Association. Everybody calls it NYRA. We need to submit this to NYRA. And I'm like, we're going through the legal process. And he was calling like every 2 weeks. And I just thought that was odd, because why would somebody call about a whatever horse? You just keep training it and keep sending bills and leave it in the barn. Don't even worry about it until they get their things sorted out. Finally, we get it sorted out. The horse ships to Gulfstream outside of Miami, and first time starter on the dirt as a 3-year-old in January. He misses the break out of the gate and comes flying and wins by 5 in what you would consider a very green and not great trip. And I'm actually in Arkansas duck hunting with a bunch of buddies. And we're in the duck blind watching on my phone. And it was, I've won plenty of races before, won a bunch of maiden races, but that was different.
You probably scared all the ducks off with the noise and celebration.
I mean, when you have a 3-year-old colt break his maiden in January, like he did, that's just kind of exciting. And within 10 minutes, my phone was ringing off the hook. I probably had, by the time the weekend was over, I probably had 10 offers to buy him and his sister.
Is that people knowing that the Derby's coming up, or like?
Yeah,
it's showing signs.
People watching the racing and knowing what the times should be and how he did it and what his race record was and what his pedigree was and all of that. So yeah, before my friends were like, "What is going on?" Like they didn't know. It's like, this is what happens when you have a 3-year-old that looks good. Everybody's after it. So we recognized that we should take some money off the table. He could go out training tomorrow and hurt himself and be done. He could kick the stall wall tonight and it's all over. Because if you miss time from January to May,
when the Derby's in May,
it's really hard. Everything has to go perfectly. That's why the Derby's so hard to win. So we end up selling a quarter of him to some friends that we'd known for years, clients and close friends, the Roth family. So it's me, my aunt, and the Roths. And just the way it all worked out was great. They were super easy partners. Their agent was my buddy Alex. And between me and Alex and our third friend Jason, we kind of and Bill just put this plan together on how this was all going to go and how we hoped it would go. And we went to Louisiana for a listed stake race in February. He ran second, and we really had, Alex and I flew down for that for a guys weekend, and we had really no expectation of what was going to happen. We knew he ran one good race. Let's see what happens next. And he runs second to the eventual Preakness winner that year, Will. I think that's who it was. And when he ran second, and then his sister won a stake two races before. So the half sister and half brother running on the same day was pretty fun. So when he runs second there, we're like, yeah, we got something here. He's still super green and doesn't know what he's doing and wants more distance and all the things, all the excuses that you make when you don't win. So we circle back with Bill, and he says, I'd like to run him in the Louisiana Derby and the Arkansas Derby, and then go to the Kentucky Derby if he runs well. Well, if we had won either of those prep races, we wouldn't have had to do the other, but we also knew that 1.125 miles distance wasn't going to be enough for him. He needed more. He was like, Belmont probably suited him the best at 1.5 miles. Generally speaking, the horses that have the speed to win the prep races don't have the stamina to win the Derby itself. I know people listening will come up with 15 examples of otherwise, but that's my experience.
Is the Derby longer?
Derby's 1.25 miles.
Okay.
That's the first time a 3-year-old will run that far ever. And then they step back to 1 3/16 miles for the Preakness, and then they go to 1.5 miles for the Belmont. So we ran in the Louisiana Derby. We ran third. And the weird part about that season was there was just a ton of long shots that were winning these races. So in any normal year, that probably would have been enough to get in the Derby, but we had to go to Arkansas, and we ran third in Arkansas. I was not at that race. There was some super bad weather, and all the flights got canceled. So he runs third in the slop, and we were the last horse to get in. And I was at the Thoroughbred Club here in Lexington watching that with a bunch of friends, and that was awesome. We knew we're in the Derby. We had the highest at that time. We had the highest point total for the last place horse to get in, and we were the last horse to select a jockey. Fortunately, we got who I thought at the time and still think is the top rider in America, Flavian Pratt.
We'll throw another video up there of his silks, right?
Yep. So we got Flavian, and everything was golden. So fast forward a couple weeks, we didn't really want to get too excited, because you get too excited and make too many plans, bad things happen. He can still kick a stall wall or whatever it might be. It's just always bad news when you're talking horses. Very infrequently does someone call and give you like great news. So,
and you referenced kicking the stall wall. Does that break their leg? Like what's?
It could. Generally, no, but it could bruise the bottom of their sole.
Okay.
And they could.
Yeah. And they're done. Yeah.
Be done for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you miss a week of training going in the Derby. That's really bad. That's like getting a cold.
Yeah.
2 weeks before your 100-meter dash in the Olympics. So, we did it right. We had a big party Friday night at my house before the race, and Churchill Downs is awesome. They supply you with the car for the week of the race, and we go for the draw, and we do all the things and have family and friends from out of town, and go to the race like anybody else. VIP lane going in. They didn't even check for your tickets. Like it was a great experience. I had said, because I was in charge, I had said, when he crosses the finish, there's 150,000 people there. It's a total nightmare trying to leave. So we had said, everyone agreed. We had 2 cars going back to Lexington, and everyone had agreed right when they cross the finish line, assuming we don't win, we're gone. Mm-hmm. We're gonna be out of here. And I had been telling anyone that would listen, Country House and his stablemate Tacitus, in my opinion, had the best pre-race final breeze of any of the horses. They looked awesome. And there was a little bit of extracurricular with another horse that was breezing in front of us, and that was kind of an unfortunate situation for them. But R2 looked, he didn't get hurt. He just, I think, got a little competitive and got with us and did substantially more than his trainer wanted. But R2 looked awesome, looked really good. Tacitus was regally bred, Juddmonte, graded stake winners throughout the pedigree, and then there was us. And Tacitus was the highest point earner, I think, going into the race. Didn't go off as favorite, but was a spectacular horse, trained by Bill also. So we're supposed to leave right when the horses cross the finish line. Well, the way it goes, we end up crossing the finish line second. And I can't, from where we were, the angle of the turn, I can't really see what happened, but as my friends tell me, they're like ready to leave, and they turn around and try and find me, and I'm gone. Left the box, went right onto the racetrack, and for those that aren't familiar with the 2019 Derby, there was an objection filed. I get on the track, I see Flavian coming back, and I see him talking to Bill, and I'm trying to look up at the Jumbotron to see. It was like right when the cameras switched angles, so I didn't even catch what happened live, but maximum security, as he was coming around, that he led out of the gate, and as he was coming around the final turn, he pretty much went out about 4 paths and cleared out a few horses. It was really fortunate that nobody clipped heels, because it would have been a total disaster. But hearing what Flavian had to say, he's going to file an objection. So he does that, and then we end up standing on the track for, I think it turned out to be 22 minutes for the stewards to decide. And I kind of liken it to the end of an NBA game when the referees are taking a lot of time to figure out, they're not trying to figure out whose ball it is. They're trying to figure out how much time is left on the clock. And then in this instance, it wasn't who is coming down. We knew it was going to be maximum security because it was egregious it was totally
obvious.
It was totally obvious. There were some people that disagreed with that, but they're just wrong. You can't do that. It was, where are we going to put him, right? So the horse that was most whoever he interfered with, he goes behind that horse. So he ended up finishing 17th behind Long Range Toddy, who was on his flank when he cleared him out. And I think even Louis Saez, when they were interviewing him after the race, who was that? He was Maximum Security's jockey, who had previously ridden Country. Actually rode Country House multiple times, and chose Maximum Security. But I think he knew that he had maybe gone a little bit overboard and let him drift too much. You can clearly see it on the track. There's marks from the tractors, and you can see how far he comes over. 22 minutes is up, and they put it up on the board that we won. So not not the ideal scenario. I felt badly for Bill. I would have liked to have seen the horse cross first for him. I don't care. We won. Like, we have the trophy. But I know that for him, there was a little bit of an asterisk on that race, and he turned out to win last year with Sovereignty. So all good. Now he's got 2 and 1 done the traditional way. But for me, I didn't care. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't our horse's fault. We just happened to benefit from reckless riding. So
what were the odds of Country House going into the Derby?
he was 65-1, which kind of shocked me. I know he hadn't won a stake race going into that, but he had run really well against great competition, and his pedigree indicated that he would love the distance. So I was a little bit surprised that I thought 25-30-1 probably would have been more likely, but yeah, 65-1. I think at that time we were the second longest shot to win.
I was going to ask you, ever in Derby history?
Yeah. A couple of years later, Rich Strike won at longer odds. So I think we're the third longest odds to win.
Wow. The day of that race, were you all the longest odds from the lineup? Was anybody higher?
I don't think so. I think there was one horse longer than us.
Okay. Wow.
But anybody that bet on the horse pretty much knew us. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and there's definitely, you know, a bunch of people that we probably didn't know, but I had a lot of friends sending me win tickets. I know of 3 people that won over 6 figures. And then I've got probably 10 to 15 different people that won between 10 and 50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty wild.
Life after the Derby, you know, like when it comes to, I mean, you're in some pretty elite company, you know, when it comes to winning the Derby. So like, what's post Derby like? And I know we're going to talk about a career pivot here in a minute, but
I mean,
sure
that
just takes a while for it to settle in.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. I remember looking at my phone, and for a while I started to try and answer texts, but then I just had to stop. I think I had like 400 text messages from pretty much anybody that I'd never ever known that still had my number. You know, people sending me selfies of them in front of the TV with, you know, me on it. Friends from college, friends from elementary school, friends from California and wherever. It was pretty wild. You know, even going around town here in Lexington for the month or 2 after that, people coming up to our table, and like, it was, you know, we're out to dinner and multiple people every single night coming over and congratulating us and saying hi. And it was super weird. Not to say that I didn't enjoy the attention, but it was definitely different. And I went from just being another guy in the horse business to being someone that, like, somehow my opinion mattered all of a sudden, which was weird. But yeah, it was a life-altering moment, and I'm not sure how many living Derby winners there are, but there's not 50. Like, I don't even know if there's 25. Like, it's not a very big number. And then to have done it with my aunt, with one of my uncle's homebreds, we had 1 colt that year. That was it. We had 1 colt. And with the Roths, who had been so good to be partners with. A lot of times you hear about these nightmare partnerships where by the time the Derby comes around, they're not even talking and are in different boxes. It was great. I would like to do it again.
So let's get into what you're doing now. I know you've been kind of up to something different now, and
Yeah. So
with maybe the same name, Blackwood.
Yep, same name, Blackwood Stables to Blackwood Bourbon now. In 2020 during COVID, a mutual friend of ours, Justin Thompson, we were having lunch and he brought a private label bottle to give me. And I was like, what's this? You made this? He's like, yeah. He totally lied to me. He's like, it wasn't that hard.
It lines up.
Yeah. I was like, this is super cool. And over the course of a few months, I just started asking a lot more questions. I'd always been more on the consumption versus the production side of the bourbon industry. Loved bourbon, liked the history of it. It's very Kentucky. I love Kentucky. Consider Kentucky my home. And I was just fascinated with the process. I like making things, building things. And it was I've kind of always had the mindset that, I mean, I can do this. How hard could this possibly be? We can totally do this. Made a phone call to a buddy of mine in Atlanta who's in private equity and buys and sells businesses, and was like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, from a business standpoint. He's like, well, I'll give you a couple bucks. And next thing you know, I'd raised a little bit of money, and here we go. I mean, this was our first label that we did. Blackwood toasted bourbon. It's got country house on the label. You've got the little 20 saddle towel, some roses going through some grains.
Show the video as well on the
some roses bouncing through there, kind of symbolizing the Derby win, and then some different grains that go into the production of bourbon. So here we are.
Great looking bottle.
We started that in 2020, and over the course of a couple years, I was very happy with the job that I had, running Blackwood stables. Wasn't always easy, but I enjoyed every single day being out at the farm. Had great staff, people that had been there for extended periods of time. We had very little turnover. It was just good. Had, for the most part, really good clients. But I started finding myself thinking about bourbon during the day more and more. And I became somewhat disenfranchised with the way that the thoroughbred thing was going. And for a number of different reasons, I just said, I've had a good run in horses. I've been doing this professionally for 20 years. I think maybe it's time for a change. So I put my farm up for sale and went all in on bourbon. So I hope that at some point down the line I can get back into horses, but I would rather do it, for the sport, right? Versus the way I was doing it, which was professionally.
Yeah.
The joy of the farm was it allowed me to have a bunch of racehorses. I think we would have 7 to 15 horses running at any one time, which is awesome, right? That's so cool. They're training on my farm. Our farm trainer is taking them to the races, and it was great. I owned some of them myself. Most of them I owned in partnership with people, and it was just great. And I would love to get back to having horses at the track. But I've got to go make some money before I do that, because I could kind of put them into the fold at the farm, and I wasn't like out of pocket like I would be if I would do it now. So hopefully over time, I'll be back in a position where I can, buy a few mares and do the whole breed to race thing. So, but the bourbon's been super fun. Steep learning curve. It's far more challenging than I anticipated.
So people are going to listening. Some are going to be bourbon enthusiasts. Other ones are going to know from a distance and associate, Kentucky and bourbon. I'm sure some people are thinking like, how saturated is that? Like Kentucky and bourbon, is there a lot out there? Like kind of carving out your own path here.
I mean, if it were easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And it's ultra challenging, but what isn't? You know, very, very few things, very few times do people go out and like do something for the first time ever. So I'm not doing anything that other people haven't done, but I think the way we're doing it is maybe a little bit unique.
Talk about that a little bit. What makes
I mean, we're a
Blackwood's-
craft boutique brand.
Yeah.
We hand bottle, hand label, you know, do everything in house, except for the distillation. So we're sourcing barrels from a third party, and then doing our secondary aging process, and then blending everything in house, which your brother does. So yeah, it's and being a boutique kind of higher end. I think the term they use is luxury brand.
Yeah.
Which I think that's kind of funny because I don't look at this as a luxury brand, but
Can we call it bougie bourbon? Is that
yeah.
okay?
But our price point, I think, does put us there to some degree. You know, our lowest price bourbon right now is in the $80 range, and then we've got one that we're about to release that'll be about $200 a bottle. But yeah, it's been great. I love, as I said earlier, I love talking to people. I love hanging out at places, talking to strangers, making new friends, hanging out in bars and restaurants and chatting up bar managers and bartenders, and you never know who you're going to run into. I was at a local restaurant last week and chatted up a guy, and he ended up coming back to the gift shop and buying $1,000 worth of bourbon. Like, that was just by chance because I was being friendly to a stranger, and that was
Being
awesome.
yourself.
Yeah, it was super cool. So, and I love talking about bourbon. I love, sharing my experiences in horse racing. I think both of them, to the outsider, seem like kind of closed or hard industries to get access to. And if I can give people a little window into what that looks like, I'm always happy to do it. Bourbon or horses or whatever it is.
What going back to, I know there's, as you just said, there's a lot of overlap in, like you said, they're both difficult industries to kind of get into. I don't know what's your down the road vision with Blackwood? Like, what are you hoping to do in this space?
Oh, I mean, I would love for it to be profitable.
One.
Yeah, I think we just want to produce a quality product that people enjoy. We would ultimately like to build a distillery, a small craft distillery. I bought a piece of property about 30 minutes south of here with a good buddy of mine, and we're in the process of hopefully doing that. We've gotten into an unfortunate legal situation with some of our lovely neighbors. Hopefully that shakes out here in the very near future, because it's been going on for over 2 years, which is so much fun. My first
A lot of fun town hall meetings.
Yeah, my first the pitchforks and everything. This is my first experience with the legal system, so that's somewhat eye-opening. But I think hospitality. I really enjoy hospitality. When I was working at Three Chimneys or at Blackwood, but primarily at Three Chimneys, I loved giving tours. Showing off that farm was my favorite thing to do. And similarly at Blackwood, but when you have stallions, it's just different. Giving people tours of the farm was, like I said, my favorite thing to do. Love doing it. And at the new property, I'm like pointing that way because it's south of us, that direction. But at the new property, that's what I'm most excited about, creating something that is 100% unique, Not that we're like the first people to ever make bourbon. That's not the unique part at all. But having our experience being 100% unique to everything else out there, and doing everything the way I think it should be done, the way I want it to be done from a hospitality standpoint. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening or watching can think immediately of some great examples they've had of hospitality and the way they've been treated, and then other ways. And I just think that we have a pretty remarkable opportunity with this piece of property, this brand, and my love of cocktails and food and nature, that we could do something really, really special that will be completely unique to Central Kentucky, and in the bourbon industry, there won't be anything like it. So hopefully we can pull a rabbit out of the proverbial hat and make that happen. I have not given up on the dream yet, although this legal process has been not fun.
Well, it's a big vision, big dream, a lot of opportunity. I know you had said earlier on like a secondary process. So everything in Blackwood lineup's toasted. So for the non-bourbon drink, currently. So toasted is a colloquialism for just secondary finishing. It sounds nicer, so that's why we say toasted. All it means is that we've taken it from its original barrel and put it into another barrel. In our instance, we use another new white oak, American white oak barrel. So, I mean, one of the definitions of bourbon is it's got to be a first use charred white oak barrel. The fact that we use some toasted barrels, I think, is definitely some gray area, and maybe doesn't classify it as bourbon. If it went in there originally, it would be whiskey, American whiskey. But because we're starting with an 8-year product, and it's a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey finished in toasted and charred barrels. So that's how we do it. We use Kelvin cooperage out of Louisville, which is a craft cooperage. I was actually just there with a group that we're collaborating on a product with, and did a tour, and they do everything by hand there still, and it was such a cool facility. Started in Scotland and moved here, I think 10 or 15 years ago, to the Louisville area. And yeah, that was really cool. It's fun to see people making things in America still. So right now we've got 3 bourbons and 3 ryes. We've got a toasted 105, which is 105 proof. We've got the toasted bourbon and toasted rye, which is barrel strength. So that varies, but it's going to be in the 115 to 120 range. And then we've got single barrels of both of those products at barrel strength. And then we have a new product coming out. I was hoping it would already be out, but we're, just normal business things that you have no control over. We've got a 12-year traditional unfinished single barrel coming out. Some barrels that we bought a bunch of years ago that we've kind of been hanging on to, waiting for this. So pretty excited about that. We're actually going to call it Country House. So it's going to have some Derby branding also, and kind of a tribute bottle to my uncle. That's cool.
Yeah, be good.
That's really cool.
And it's really good. It's really good liquid. I'm like pretty fired up to get this out there. But we're just waiting on some packaging. Always waiting.
It's stuck on a ship in the ocean somewhere on the way over here.
Well, I won't go into too much because I'm not wanting to make anybody look bad.
Yeah.
We're waiting on some things.
Yeah.
Out of my control.
I heard you talk earlier around like in the horse side of things, you talk about your farm, and we had a good team. We had all these people, and then you step into something like this where I'm sure there's times or parts of it where it feels a little bit more, it's a little quiet. it's me. And I know like you've got some other people around you, but like the team aspect of this, do you feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you feel like you have your people?
I have one employee, and Zach Johnston, he does a spectacular job. He kind of helps. He's our chief brand officer, but he's spent, the last 20 years in the food and beverage scene, and then he was a writer for Uprocks magazine for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And he kind of focuses on sales to some degree. So single barrels, getting into new markets. I know you just got us into Australia within the last couple months. So he's kind of focusing on sales, and he comes down every Friday and we sit in the gift shop, man the gift shop, and just talk to whoever might come in. And then, Justin Sloan is your brother, does all of our blending. But you're right. Going from having 65 employees at the farm, or working at Three Chimneys where I had, 125 coworkers, or at North Star where I had, 1,200 coworkers, or however many people work there, I do kind of feel like I'm on an island to some degree. But I also really like it in the respect that I still have enough people to bounce ideas off of that I respect. But at the end of the day, it's my decision. And if something goes wrong, it's on me. And like from a leadership standpoint, it's so important to understand that anything that happens in your organization is ultimately your responsibility. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to ask anybody, can I go do A, B, and C?
The power of autonomy.
I just do it. Mm-hmm. Not like shooting from the hip, but I can think about it and talk to my wife and talk to Sloan and talk to Zach. And, if everybody says that's a terrible idea, generally I don't do it, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, you guys just don't see it like I see it. And it's really important for it to pan out when that happens. Mm-hmm. When people tell you not to do something and you do it anyway. It's
really nice when it does, though, huh?
It is really nice when it does. I mean, when I started Blackwood Stables, people told me that I was so super crazy, and next thing you know, there's like 8 facilities like mine. So, yeah, I don't think we're trying to, not like I'm Elon Musk over here, like sending rockets into space and digging tunnels and making cars, like making whiskey. Like, it's not, I don't want to overstate what I do, but there is a lot of change happening in the industry. And I talk with some of my industry friends about this all the time. Like, I lack institutional knowledge. I have none. I didn't come up working at a distillery, working for a distributor. I grew up on a vineyard, right? So I do have some background in the space, but I'm not sure how it's supposed to be done. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why we do some of the things we do. The whole distribution thing just makes zero sense to me. Mm-hmm. So, and we're small enough that I don't have to play by the same rules that everybody else does. I mean, legally, I'm required to play by some of them.
Yeah.
But we can.
You're more nimble.
I'm more nimble, and I don't, we don't have to be at every single place across the country. We're small enough that we can live off of targeting
some cities.
Las Vegas, Jackson Hole, New Orleans, like Tallahassee has been really good to us. And that's kind of, we take like a strike approach. We're not trying to canvas the area. We couldn't, even if we had the sales, we're not capable of doing that. Like we don't have the bandwidth to do that. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You see so many wine brands that start off highly regarded and in short supply, and then they get bought by the big company, and then 5 years later their product is crap. I don't want to do that. We have, and I know this is not the right way to approach this or to say it out loud, but I didn't start this to sell it. That is not the goal. The goal is to return my investors' money and continue to pay them dividends, which I haven't done either of yet, but it's coming. It's coming. But I would love it for my kids to be working, doing this. So many brands I see start up, their whole goal is to sell. And that's not my goal. If that happens, great. I think the decisions that we make are potentially more sound because I'm going to have to deal with the ramifications of those decisions down the line. Whereas if we were just trying to package this up to sell in 18 months, the decision-making process would be completely different. So, sometimes I'm like, what did I do? I had a successful business. Yes, it was challenging. Yes, it was hard collecting money, but I enjoyed it. But after doing it for 20 years, I don't want to say I had a midlife crisis, but I had kind of done it. And I definitely enjoyed it. I loved all the people that I met and dealt with, but it was just kind of time to do something else.
Well, man, I just want to say thanks for your time. I know talking through, you got a fascinating story. Just your journey along the way and your pursuit of, I don't know, just your the spirit in which you're chasing after things. I think is inspiring. There's a lot of people listening who, it's like sometimes the risk isn't worth it, or it's too scary, and it's just have an example of leaning into it and openly, as you're saying, of like, hey, I don't know how it's going to fully pan out, but something in me said go after it, and I'm doing it.
I am definitely a risk taker, like far more than probably what some might be comfortable with. My wife is always like, I can't believe you've done any of this. You're
like, thanks, honey.
Yeah. Well, no, she's very, very supportive, but she's like, I just don't have that mentality. And I don't know where it comes from, but my dad works for himself. My grandfather worked for himself. I think it's just kind of, my Uncle Jerry worked for himself. I think it's just the entrepreneurial spirit runs strong in my family. So it's been good. It's statistically, I think it's halfway over, but I'd like to think that the next 15 to 20 years are going to be my best. So hopefully I can make this successful and make
generational.
Make this my last project. So that's the goal.